The morning started like any other for Hyunwoo. He sat at his desk in the United Defense Command Center in Geneva, drinking coffee and reviewing satellite data. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. His job was to watch for threats, analyze patterns, and make reports that most people never read. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Then the alarms went off. Every screen in the room turned red. Numbers flooded across monitors faster than anyone could read them. Hyunwoo dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but he didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the main display. Ships, hundreds of them. They appeared in Earth's orbit like ghosts materializing from nothing. The vessels were massive, each one larger than any aircraft carrier humanity had ever built. Their dark hulls reflected no light, making them look like holes torn in space itself.
"Contact! Multiple contacts!"
Someone shouted across the room. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures we've never seen before." Hyunwoo's fingers moved across his keyboard, pulling up analysis programs. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands stayed steady. Years of training took over. He watched the data flow, looking for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything that might help. Across the Pacific Ocean, Ji-won was climbing into her fighter jet when the emergency call came through her radio. She had been preparing for a routine training flight from her base in South Korea. The morning was clear, perfect for flying. She loved these quiet moments before takeoff, the smell of jet fuel, the weight of her helmet in her hands. "All pilots, scramble immediately." "This is not a drill." The voice on the radio was panic-stricken. "Unknown hostile forces in orbit." "Repeat, unknown hostile forces." Ji-won's blood went cold. She had trained for war, practiced combat scenarios 1,000 times, but those scenarios always involved human enemies. Other nations, other pilots like herself. This was something else entirely. She strapped into her cockpit and fired up the engines. Around her, other pilots were doing the same. Jets roared to life across the runway. Within minutes, they were airborne, climbing toward the sky. Ji-won looked up through her canopy and saw them. Dark shapes hanging in space like predators watching prey. In Seoul, Dae-hyun was in his laboratory when his phone exploded with emergency alerts. He was a civilian engineer, working on experimental propulsion systems for satellites. His work was theoretical, years away from practical use. Or so he had thought. He ran to the window of his lab and looked up. Even in daylight, he could see them. Strange objects that shouldn't be there, disrupting the normal blue of the sky. His mind raced. His equations, his designs, his theories, they might actually matter now. They might be the only things that mattered. Mireille was at her desk at the University of Seoul when the broadcast interrupted everything. She was a xenolinguist, someone who studied how to communicate with alien life if it ever existed. Her field had been purely theoretical, something colleagues joked about at conferences. Who would ever need to actually talk to aliens? Now the joke was over. Her computer screen flickered and changed. Everyone's screens changed. Across Earth, every television, every phone, every display showed the same thing. A face not human, not even close. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its skin was gray and scaled. When it spoke, the sound was wrong, like rocks grinding together. But underneath the alien noise, translation software kicked in. Someone, somewhere, had already started working on decoding their language. "People of Earth," the translation said. "I am War Commander Thulvax of the Velkthar Imperium. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You have 72 hours to surrender your weapons and submit to our authority. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." The screen changed. Images appeared. Cities burning. Buildings melted to slag. Bodies in the streets. World after world all reduced to ruins. 300 planets, the commander said. 300 worlds that had learned to obey. "You are primitive," Thulvax continued. "Your technology is crude. Your species is divided. You fight among yourselves like animals. We offer you mercy. Surrender now. And many of you will live as workers in our empire. Resist and you will all die. This is your only warning." The broadcast ended. For a moment, the world was silent. Then the chaos began. Hyunwoo's command center erupted into activity. Generals shouted orders. Analysts scrambled to gather information. Phone lines to world leaders lit up like fireworks. Everyone had the same questions. What do we do? How do we fight this? Can we even fight this? Hyunwoo pulled up everything he could find on the alien ships. Their energy signatures were incredible. Their weapons could probably vaporize entire cities from orbit. Their shields deflected every scanning attempt. On paper, humanity had no chance. None at all. But Hyunwoo had studied military history his whole life. He knew that wars weren't always won by the strongest army. Sometimes they were won by the most desperate one. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Every nation sent representatives. Old enemies sat beside each other. Countries that had been at war yesterday now faced something that made their conflicts seem tiny. For the first time in history, humanity had a common enemy. The debate lasted 18 hours. Some wanted to surrender. Why fight a battle we cannot win? Others argued for resistance. If we surrender, we're slaves. Better to die free than live in chains. The arguments went back and forth, growing more heated as the 72-hour deadline approached. Finally, a vote was called. Every nation had one choice to make: surrender or fight. The result was unanimous. Every single nation voted to fight. The Secretary General of the United Nations stepped before the cameras. The message would be broadcast on all frequencies, aimed up at those dark ships waiting in orbit. The words were simple. No flowery language. No diplomatic dancing. Just truth. Commander Thulvax, you have made a grave mistake. Humanity does not surrender. We have fought for our survival since we first walked upright on this planet. We have endured ice ages and plagues. We have survived disasters that would have ended weaker species. You look at our divisions and see weakness. You look at our conflicts and see primitives. You are wrong. Our divisions made us strong. Our conflicts taught us how to fight. You brought war to our home. Now you will learn what that means. In orbit, Thulvax received the message. He watched it with all four eyes, trying to understand. These creatures would choose death over submission? It made no sense. Every other species had seen the wisdom in surrender. Every other world had recognized superior force and bowed before it. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Thulvax suspected the latter. They would learn soon enough. In 3 days, the bombardment would begin. In a week, Earth would be broken. In a month, the survivors would be working in Velkthar factories, grateful to be alive. He had conquered 300 worlds. Earth would be 301. But as Thulvax looked at the small blue planet below, something nagged at him. A feeling he had never experienced before. He dismissed it as nothing. Surely it was nothing. He did not yet know that the feeling was fear. The bombardment began exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum. Thulvax gave the order himself, watching from his command ship as beams of superheated plasma lanced down from orbit. The first target was London. The ancient city lit up like a star for 3 seconds, then vanished in a cloud of ash and smoke. Next came Beijing, then Mumbai, then New York. One by one, Earth's great cities burned. The Velkthar weapons were precise and terrible. Each shot vaporized everything within a kilometer. Millions died in the first hour. Millions more in the second. Ji-won watched the destruction from her cockpit as her squadron raced toward engagement range. She had never felt such rage before. Her hands gripped the flight stick so hard her knuckles turned white. Below her, her home country was under attack. Her people were dying, and she was going to make these aliens pay for every single life. "All wings, this is command," the radio crackled. Enemy fighters deploying from the capital ships. Count is over 200 contacts. They're coming down to finish the job. "Copy that, command," Ji-won replied. Her voice was cold and steady. "All units, weapons free. Let's show them what a mistake looks like." The Velkthar fighters were sleek and fast, their hulls glowing with some kind of energy field. They moved in perfect formation, diving toward Earth's surface in organized waves. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Precise, professional. Exactly what you would expect from an empire that had conquered 300 worlds. They had never fought humans before. Ji-won's squadron broke formation immediately. Instead of meeting the aliens in a straight fight, they scattered in all directions. The Velkthar fighters tried to track them, but suddenly their organized attack became chaos. Human pilots dove through debris fields from destroyed satellites, using the wreckage as cover. They flew impossibly close to each other, crossing paths in ways that should have caused collisions. They ignored every rule of engagement warfare, every principle of safe combat flying. One Velkthar pilot got a lock on Ji-won's jet. She saw the weapons preparing to fire and smiled. At the last second, she cut her engines completely and went into a flat spin. The alien weapons fired at empty space. Before the Velkthar pilot could adjust, Jiwan's wingman came up from below and put 3 missiles into his engines. The alien fighter exploded in a ball of green fire. "First kill," her wingman shouted over the radio. "Did you see that?" "Stay focused," Jiwan snapped. But she was smiling too. They could be hurt. They could die. That was all she needed to know. In Geneva, Hyunwoo was coordinating attacks from a dozen different fronts. His screen showed battles raging across the planet. Most of them were not going well. The Velkthar shields were strong, their weapons devastating. Human missiles bounced off their energy barriers like toys. But Hyunwoo had noticed something. Every time a Velkthar ship fired its main weapons, there was a tiny fluctuation in the shield. Just a fraction of a second where the energy field weakened. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "All units, new targeting data," he broadcast. "Wait for them to fire their main guns, then hit them with everything you have. Aim for the same spot. Overwhelm the shield in that weak moment." It was a desperate tactic. It required perfect timing. It meant waiting under fire, watching death approach, and holding steady until the exact right moment. Human forces did it anyway. Over Moscow, a Velkthar destroyer prepared to bombard the city. Its main cannon charged with terrible light. Russian fighters waited, their missiles armed and ready. The alien ship fired. In that same instant, 40 missiles streaked toward the exact same point on its hull. The shield flickered, failed. 37 missiles got through. The destroyer tore apart from the inside, breaking into 3 pieces that tumbled back toward space. Atmosphere vented in great plumes of frozen air. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. It died in silence as all things die in space. In his command ship, Thulvax watched the destruction with disbelief. That was impossible. These primitives didn't have the technology to penetrate Velkthar shields. Their weapons were crude, their tactics chaotic. They should be dying, not winning. "Analysis," he demanded. "How did they penetrate our shields?" His tactical officer studied the data, all 4 eyes wide with confusion. "Commander, they waited until we fired, then concentrated their attack on a single point during the shield recycle. The timing required it should be impossible. No species has reaction times fast enough to exploit that weakness." "Then how did they do it?" Thulvax roared. The officer had no answer. Neither did anyone else on the bridge. In Seoul, Daehyun was working frantically in his laboratory. His experimental drive system, designed to push small satellites to incredible speeds, had caught the attention of military officials. They wanted to know if it could be weaponized. The answer, Daehyun realized with growing excitement, was yes. His design used gravitational manipulation to accelerate objects without conventional thrust. In theory, it could push a small craft to a significant fraction of light speed. In practice, he had never tested it beyond computer simulations. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. But right now, dangerous and unpredictable sounded perfect. "How long until we can mount this on a missile?" A general asked him over a video call. Daehyun looked at his equations, his prototypes, his years of careful research. "Give me 12 hours, he said. The general looked at him with hard eyes. "You have 6. Daehyun nodded and got to work. Mireille had been trying to communicate with the Velthar since the fighting started. She broadcast messages in every frequency, using mathematical principles that any intelligent species should understand. Peace, negotiation, discussion, anything to stop the killing. The aliens finally responded. But not with words. They responded by trying to trace her signal and target her location. Mireille barely escaped when a plasma beam vaporized the university building she had been working in. She ran through the streets of Seoul, covered in dust and ash, carrying nothing but her laptop and a desperate hope that communication was still possible. She found shelter in a subway station, huddled with thousands of other civilians. The lights flickered every time another bombardment hit somewhere in the city. Children cried. Adults tried to stay calm. Everyone knew they might die at any moment. Mireille opened her laptop and kept working. If the Velkthar wouldn't talk, maybe she could find another way to reach them. She started hacking into their communications, using the same mathematical patterns she had tried before. It was probably useless, probably pointless. Then she got in. Suddenly, her screen filled with alien text. Communications between Velkthar ships, battle reports, casualty lists. The lists were short, but they existed. The aliens were losing soldiers, losing ships. They were bleeding. More importantly, she could see their confusion. Message after message asking the same question. Why are these humans fighting so hard? Why don't they surrender? Every other species had surrendered. Every other world had seen the wisdom in submission. Earth was different. Earth was wrong. Earth didn't follow the rules. Mireille smiled despite everything. She copied all the data she could and sent it to Hyunwoo's command center. Knowledge was power. Understanding the enemy was the first step to beating them. Back in orbit, Jiwon's squadron was running low on fuel and ammunition. They had been fighting for 6 hours straight. Her arms ached. Her eyes burned from staring at targeting displays. She had personally shot down 3 alien fighters and assisted with 2 more kills. But more Velkthar ships kept coming. For every one they destroyed, 2 more arrived from deeper in the fleet. All wings return to base for rearm and refuel, Command ordered. Negative, Jiwon replied. We still have targets up here. That's an order, Wing Commander. You can't fight if you're dead, come home. We need you for tomorrow. Jiwon wanted to argue, wanted to stay and keep fighting. But Command was right. This wasn't a sprint. It was a marathon. A long, terrible marathon. Copy that. All wings, break off and return to base. As her squadron descended back toward Earth, Jiwon looked up at the Velkthar fleet. There were fewer ships than before. Not many fewer, but some. They had drawn first blood, proved that the aliens could be hurt. Thulvak stood on his command deck and watched the primitive humans retreat. He should have felt victorious. His forces still outnumbered them greatly. His technology was still superior. By every logical measure, he was winning. So why did it feel like he was losing? 3 months into the war, Earth was bleeding but still standing. Cities lay in ruins. Entire regions had been reduced to scorched wastelands. The death toll had climbed past 50 million and kept rising. By every reasonable measure, humanity should have surrendered weeks ago. Instead, they fought harder. Thulvax had requested reinforcements after the first month. He told his superiors that Earth was proving more difficult than expected, that the humans possessed unusual tactical capabilities. The response was 3 more fleets under Supreme Admiral Krelmoth, who arrived with contempt in all 4 of his eyes. You have let primitives embarrass our empire, Krelmoth said during his first briefing aboard Thulvax's command ship. 300 worlds fell before our might. This single planet should have taken 3 days, not 3 months. Thulvax kept his head bowed. The humans are resourceful, Admiral. They fight without honor, without proper formation. They use tactics we have never encountered. Tactics? Krelmoth laughed, a sound like metal scraping stone. They are insects with crude weapons. I will demonstrate how real warriors crush resistance. In 1 week, Earth will be ours, Thulvax said nothing. He had learned not to underestimate the humans. He hoped Krelmoth would learn the same lesson before it was too late. Down on Earth, Hyunwoo was working with less sleep each day. His command center ran on coffee and determination. The walls were covered with maps, battle plans, casualty reports. Every surface held some piece of the puzzle he was trying to solve. How do you beat an enemy with better technology, more ships, and infinite reinforcements? The answer, he was beginning to realize, wasn't about beating them in straight combat. It was about making them understand the cost of fighting. Every destroyed alien ship was a lesson. Every lost soldier was a question. Is this planet worth the price? Mireille's hacking had given them access to Velkthar communications. Hyunwoo read through the translated messages every day, learning how the aliens thought. They were methodical, precise, and completely unprepared for chaos. They expected battles to follow rules, enemies to act predictably. Humans did neither. New orders for all units, Hyunwoo broadcast to every military command on the planet. Stop fighting fair. Use every dirty trick you know. Ambushes, traps, false retreats. Make them afraid to advance. Make every meter of ground cost them blood. Across Earth, forces adapted. In Russia, ground troops lured Velkthar landing parties into frozen forests and disappeared into the trees, picking them off one by one. In Australia, engineers rigged entire ghost towns with explosives. In South America, guerrilla fighters hit supply lines and vanished before the aliens could respond. The Velkthar were warriors, but they had never been hunters. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to stand still and die properly. Jiwon had been promoted to wing commander after the original commander died in combat. She now coordinated air operations across the entire Pacific region. Her pilots were the best of the best, survivors of 3 months of constant combat. They were also completely insane by alien standards. Ji-won watched one of Dae-hyun's new weapons being loaded onto a fighter. The engineer had delivered on his promise. His gravitational drive, mounted on a missile, could accelerate a small warhead to incredible speeds. The missile itself was suicide to fire. The acceleration forces would tear apart anything nearby, including the launching ship. Human pilots volunteered to fire them anyway. "You understand this is a one-way trip," Ji-won told the pilot being outfitted with the weapon. His name was Young Min, and he had lost his entire family in the Beijing bombardment. "I understand," Young Min said quietly. "That Velkthar carrier over Japan needs to die. This is how we kill it." Ji-won wanted to stop him, wanted to find another way, but there was no other way. The carrier's shields were too strong for conventional weapons. This was the only option. "Make it count," she said finally. Young Min saluted and climbed into his fighter. Ji-won watched him take off, climbing toward orbit and the massive alien carrier that hung over Japan like a predator. Her hands clenched at her sides. She hated this, hated sending good people to die, hated that it was necessary. Young Min's fighter accelerated toward the carrier. The Velkthar detected him immediately, launching interceptors and firing point defense weapons. Dozens of beams lanced through space trying to swat him down. Young Min dodged and weaved, his flying more art than science until he was in range. He armed the gravitational missile, locked onto the carrier, said a prayer to ancestors he hoped were watching. Then he fired. The missile leaped forward, its drive bending space itself. It accelerated from subsonic to a significant fraction of light speed in under 3 seconds. The carrier's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and conventional projectiles, did nothing. The missile simply ignored them. It hit the carrier dead center, punching through its hull like paper. The kinetic energy released was enormous. The carrier broke in half, both pieces tumbling through space and trailing debris. Thousands of Velkthar died instantly. Young Min's fighter, caught in the backwash of gravitational distortion, tore apart. He had maybe half a second to realize his mission succeeded before everything ended. Ji-won closed her eyes when the telemetry went dead. Another name to remember. Another person who had given everything. The list was getting too long. But Young Min's sacrifice had killed the carrier. That had to mean something. It had to. Dae-hyun watched the test results with mixed feelings. His weapon worked perfectly. It was also going to kill every pilot who used it. He had created something terrible and wonderful at the same time. The realization made him sick, but when military command asked for 50 more, he said yes. Because the alternative was losing, and losing meant extinction. He worked day and night, building the weapons that would kill both aliens and the pilots brave enough to deploy them. Sometimes he cried while he worked. Sometimes he was too tired to feel anything. But he kept working, because stopping would mean giving up. In orbit, Krelmuth watched the carrier die and felt something he had not experienced in decades. His species had been apex predators for so long, they had forgotten what fear tasted like. Now he remembered. "Analysis," he demanded. "What weapon was that?" "Unknown, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. All 4 of the officers' eyes were wide with shock. "The projectile somehow ignored our shields completely. The energy readings suggest gravitational manipulation, but that level of technology should be centuries beyond their capability. Then how do they have it?" Krelmuth roared. "We believe they are. Improvising, Admiral. Taking theoretical research and weaponizing it out of desperation. They're not following any logical development path. They're just trying anything that might work." Krelmuth stared at the debris field that used to be one of his carriers. These humans were not warriors. They were something worse. They were survivors, throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. They had no pride, no honor, no rules. They simply refused to die. "Increase bombardment," he ordered. "I want every major city reduced to rubble within 48 hours. These creatures need to learn their place." The bombardment intensified. More cities died. More millions perished. But for every city destroyed, human resistance grew fiercer. It was like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Every attack just made them angrier. Mireille, now working directly with Hyunwoo's command team, had discovered something interesting in the Velkthar communications. The aliens were starting to question the war. Not openly, not yet, but in small ways. Delays in following orders. Requests for reassignment. Questions about when the campaign would end. "They're getting tired," she told Hyunwoo. Their species doesn't understand prolonged conflict. They're used to quick victories. This grinding war of attrition is foreign to them. Hyunwoo looked at the latest casualty reports. Earth had lost so much, but maybe, just maybe, the aliens were losing something too. Not ships or soldiers, though they were bleeding those as well. They were losing certainty, losing confidence, learning that overwhelming force didn't guarantee victory. Can you broadcast a message to their fleet? Hyunwoo asked. Something they'll all hear? Probably.
What do you want to say?
Hyunwoo thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. Tell them we know they're tired. Tell them we know they want to go home. Tell them they can leave anytime they want. We'll let them retreat, but if they stay, we'll make them regret every single day of it. Tell them exactly that. Mireille composed the message and broadcast it on all Velkthar frequencies. For a moment there was silence. Then the alien communications exploded with activity. Heated arguments, denials. But underneath it all, a question that kept repeating, what if they're right? Tulvax read the human message and felt that nagging fear grow stronger. He had known from the beginning that these creatures were different. Now Krelmoth was learning it too. The question was whether they would learn it in time, or whether their pride would kill them all. 6 months after the invasion began, humanity stopped defending and started attacking. The decision came after a long meeting of world leaders, all of them exhausted and grieving but not broken. Earth had lost over 200 million people. Entire nations had been devastated. But the Velkthar had lost something too, their belief in easy victory. We've been fighting on our soil for half a year, Hyunwoo said during the strategy meeting. They expect us to stay here to keep defending. What if we don't? What if we take the fight to them? The room went silent. The idea was audacious. Humanity had barely managed to reverse engineer some Velkthar technology. Their ships were crude, cobbled together from stolen parts and desperate engineering. They had 40 vessels that could fly between stars compared to the hundreds the aliens commanded. We'll be outgunned, a general said. Outnumbered. They have defensive installations we know nothing about. They thought the same thing about us. Ji-won spoke up from her video link. She was covered in burns from her latest mission, but her eyes were fierce. They assumed we'd roll over and die. We proved them wrong. Let's do it again. The vote was close, but it passed. Operation Homecoming was approved. Humanity would strike at the Velkthar staging base in the Proxima system, the closest alien installation to Earth. The fleet would be small but fast, hitting hard and getting out before reinforcements arrived. Ji-won was given command of the assault carrier Indomitable. The name felt appropriate. That's what humans were, stubborn, unyielding, refusing to know when they were beaten. The carrier had been built from salvaged Velkthar hull plating and human ingenuity, powered by Daehyun's gravitational drives and armed with everything they could mount on it. She stood on the bridge and looked at her crew. They were so young, most of them. Barely trained. Many had never been in space before 6 months ago. Now they were about to attack an alien military installation in another star system. I won't lie to you, Ji-won addressed her crew over the ship-wide intercom. This mission is dangerous. We might not make it back. But if we succeed, we prove something important. We prove that Earth can strike back, that we're not just victims waiting to die, that we're a threat. Any questions? One young crewman raised his hand. His name was Tae-yang and he looked terrified. Commander, what if we fail? Then we make sure it costs them enough that they think twice about the next fight, Ji-won said simply. We're not here to die. We're here to win. But if we do die, we die making them pay for every inch. The crew nodded. They were scared but ready. That was enough. 40 ships left Earth's orbit, traveling through the void toward Proxima. They moved in complete radio silence, using the dark of space to hide their approach. Daehyun had equipped them with experimental stealth technology, stolen from Velkthar designs and improved upon. It wasn't perfect, but it might give them a few precious minutes of surprise. On Earth, Hyunwoo coordinated with the fleet through delayed transmissions. By the time his messages reached them, the situation would have changed. Ji-won and her commanders would have to make decisions on their own, in the moment with no backup or second chances. Tulvax was no longer in charge of the invasion. Krelmoth had demoted him after the carrier loss, assigning him to a patrol frigate on the edge of the fleet. It was meant to be humiliating, a punishment for failure, but Tulvax felt relief. He was away from the front lines, away from the humans who fought like demons. He was monitoring communications when the reports started coming in. The Proxima base was under attack. By humans, the messages made no sense. How had humans gotten to Proxima? They barely had spaceflight. Their ships were primitive. This was impossible. But the casualty reports were real. The base was being destroyed. In the Proxima system, G1's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel right on top of the Velkthar station. The aliens had never stationed strong defenses there. Why would they? No enemy had ever pushed them back to their own territory before. The base was a logistics hub, storing supplies and coordinating reinforcements. It was lightly guarded because it had never needed more. "All ships weapons free," G1 ordered. "Hit every target we marked. Make this fast." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, railguns, and Daehyun's gravitational weapons tore into the station. The few Velkthar defenders scrambled to respond, but they were disorganized, unprepared. They had been rotating fresh troops, refueling ships, celebrating victories. War was happening far away at Earth. They were safe. They were wrong. A supply depot exploded, sending wreckage spinning through space. A repair dock collapsed, trapping dozens of ships inside. The station's main reactor took 3 direct hits and went critical. Alarms blared across every Velkthar frequency as the base tore itself apart. 30 seconds until their reinforcements arrive, the Indomitable's sensor officer called out. Multiple ships jumping in from deeper in the system. "All ships prepare to jump," G1 ordered calmly. "We got what we came for. Time to go home." The human fleet vanished into faster-than-light just as Velkthar reinforcements arrived. The aliens found only wreckage, bodies, and the impossible truth that humans had struck at the heart of their territory. Back on his frigate, Thulvax read the reports with a sinking feeling in his chest. The base was gone. Completely destroyed. Humans had done it. Primitives who shouldn't even have spaceflight had traveled to another star system and demolished a military installation. Worse than the physical damage was what it meant. It meant humans could strike anywhere. The Velkthar Empire was vast, but now every base, every outpost, every station had to consider that Earth might attack it. The psychological impact was enormous. Krelmoth was furious. He issued orders to hunt down the human fleet to triple the bombardment of Earth, to make them pay for this insult. But Thulvax noticed something in the communications. The orders were being questioned. Not openly defied, but questioned. Captains asking for clarification. Officers suggesting alternative strategies. Crews requesting transfers to safer assignments. The Velkthar military machine was developing cracks. On Earth, the news of the Proxima raid spread like wildfire. People celebrated in the ruins of their cities. It didn't bring back the dead. It didn't rebuild the homes, but it proved something vital. Earth could hurt them. Earth could make them bleed. The war wasn't one-sided anymore. Hyunwoo watched the celebrations with quiet satisfaction. This was good for morale, good for the war effort, but he knew the real victory wasn't the destroyed base. It was what happened next. Mireille had been monitoring Velkthar communications during and after the raid. What she found was remarkable. The alien military was in chaos. Reports conflicted. Orders were delayed. Most telling of all, casualty lists were being disputed. Some ships were reporting their dead honestly. Others were underreporting, hiding losses from command. Why? Because the Velkthar Empire had never lost a war. They had no systems in place for processing defeat, no procedures for extended campaigns, no way to handle the psychological strain of soldiers who realize they might not survive. "They're breaking," Mireille told Hyunwoo. "Not all at once. Not obviously. But it's happening. Ship by ship, soldier by soldier, they're losing faith." "How long until it becomes critical?" Hyunwoo asked. "Unknown. But every day we survive, every attack we make, it gets worse for them. They're not built for this kind of war." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "Then we keep the pressure on. Keep them off balance. Keep making them question why they're here." G1's fleet returned to Earth as heroes. The Indomitable was damaged but intact. They had lost 8 ships in the raid, but the other 32 made it home. The crews were exhausted, traumatized, but victorious. They had proven that humanity could fight back across the stars. As G1 walked off her ship, back on Earth soil for the first time in weeks, someone asked her what it felt like to strike at the enemy's home. She thought about the Velkthar base, about the aliens scrambling to defend it, about the fear in their communications. She thought about young men and all the others who had died to buy moments like this. "It felt necessary," she said finally. "They came to our home. We showed them that two can play that game. In space, Krelmoth was issuing new orders. Tighter formation, more defensive positioning, regular patrols, all the hallmarks of an army that had stopped attacking and started protecting itself. He wouldn't admit it, couldn't admit it, but deep down he knew the truth. The war had changed. Earth was no longer prey. They were predator, and predators hunt. The war's end came not with a final battle, but with a transmission. 1 year after the invasion began, the Velkthar Imperium requested a meeting to discuss terms. Not surrender, they insisted. Just terms, a way to stop the fighting that preserved dignity for both sides. Hyunwoo read the message 3 times before he believed it. They were winning. Actually winning. Earth was devastated, scarred beyond recognition, and over 400 million people had died. But the Velkthar were retreating, regrouping, and now asking to talk. It seemed impossible. It's a trap, one general insisted during the emergency meeting. Maybe, Hyunwoo replied, but Mirai's intelligence suggests otherwise. Their empire is fracturing. Multiple colonies are refusing to send reinforcements. Ship crews are deserting. They're falling apart. Because of us? Someone asked, disbelief in their voice. Because they never expected us to fight this hard for this long, Hyunwoo said. They're not built for prolonged war, we are. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. This is just Tuesday for humans. The meeting was set for neutral territory, an asteroid belt halfway between Earth and Mars. The human delegation included Mirai as translator, Hyunwoo as strategic advisor, and representatives from every surviving nation. Jiwon came as military liaison, wearing her dress uniform and medals earned through blood. The Velkthar arrived in a single ship, a diplomatic vessel that would have been an insult a year ago. Now it looked like a white flag. Thulvax led their delegation, no longer a commander but an ambassador for a humbled empire. His 4 eyes looked tired, his scaled skin dull with stress. The negotiations took place in a temporary station built for the purpose. The 2 delegations sat across from each other, separated by a table and a year of war. For a long moment nobody spoke. What do you say to someone you've been killing for months? Mirai broke the silence. She had learned Velkthar language through months of intercepted communications, and now she spoke it directly. You requested this meeting. State your terms. Thulvax shifted uncomfortably. Speaking through a translator felt like defeat, but he had no choice. The Velkthar Imperium wishes to propose a cessation of hostilities. Both sides will withdraw to their respective territories. We will provide limited technological compensation for damages caused. No, Hyunwoo said flatly. Thulvax's 4 eyes widened. What? You don't get to invade our world, kill 400 million of our people, destroy our cities, and then walk away with a handshake? Those aren't terms. Those are insults. Then what do you want? Thulvax asked, and there was genuine confusion in his voice. You've won. We acknowledge this. What more is there? Jiwon leaned forward. You don't understand what you did to us. What you took from us. You came to our home and tried to make us slaves. You bombed our children. You burned our cities. And now you want to just leave? No, here are our terms. She slid a document across the table. Thulvax read it, his translator converting the human text to something he could understand. With each line, his scales seemed to pale. Complete withdrawal from Earth's system within 30 days. No Velkthar ship would be permitted within 5 light years without permission. Full reparations for all damages to be paid over the next century. Technology transfers to help rebuild. And one more thing. The cruelest demand of all. The Velkthar Imperium had to broadcast the truth of their defeat to every world they controlled. Every planet, every station, every citizen had to know that Earth had beaten them. That humans, primitives with crude ships and desperate tactics, had fought the mighty empire to a standstill and won. This is humiliation, Thulvax said quietly. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed, but it's more than that. It's a lesson. For you and for every other species that might think about doing what you did. Earth fights back. Earth doesn't surrender, and Earth makes sure everyone knows it. Thulvax wanted to refuse, wanted to stand up and walk away. But he had seen the casualty reports. The Velkthar had lost 80 ships, countless soldiers, and something more precious, their certainty. Multiple colonies were in open revolt, refusing to continue the war. The empire was collapsing from within. I need to consult with my superiors, Thulvax said. You have 48 hours, Jiwon said. After that, we assume you're refusing and we'll continue the war. Next time we won't hit a supply base. We'll hit a colony. We'll show your people what it feels like to have their homes destroyed. It wasn't an empty threat. The Indomitable and her sister ships were already being armed for another strike. If the Velkthar wanted to keep fighting, humanity would oblige them. They had learned how to wage war across the stars. They were good at it. Thulvax returned to his ship and sent the terms to the Imperium's leadership. The response came within 12 hours. The Velkthar accepted every demand. They had no choice. The alternative was watching their empire tear itself apart. The official surrender ceremony took place on Earth in the ruins of Sol. Daehyun had chosen the location deliberately. This was where the first bombardment had hit, where his parents and sister had died. If the Velkthar wanted peace, they would see what their war had cost. Thulvax walked through the destroyed city with his delegation. Buildings were melted slag. Streets were craters. Bodies were still being recovered from rubble. And yet humans lived here. They had rebuilt shelters in the ruins, planted gardens in the ash, and refused to abandon their home. One such person was Daehyun. He stood waiting at the ceremony site, wearing a simple suit and carrying nothing but a data pad. When Thulvax approached, the alien commander stopped. The human was younger than Thulvax expected, barely more than a juvenile by Velkthar standards. "You are the one who built the gravitational weapons," Thulvax said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Daehyun replied through Mireille's translation. "I'm the one who killed your soldiers with physics they didn't understand. You cost us many lives. You started it." Daehyun's voice was cold. "You came to my home. You killed my family, this city, all these people. They died because you wanted to own our world. Did you think we would not fight back? Did you think survival was negotiable?" Thulvax had no answer. The question had been haunting him for months. Why had they assumed Earth would surrender? Why had victory seemed certain? They had conquered 300 worlds and none had fought like this. "We never imagined," Thulvax said finally. "We conquered 300 worlds. None fought like you. We thought warfare was about superior technology, overwhelming numbers. We never understood it was about will, about refusing to surrender even when all seems lost." "That's the difference between you and us," Daehyun said. "You fight to conquer. We fight to survive. You can lose a battle and retreat. We can't. This is our only home. There's nowhere to retreat to, so we don't." Ji-won joined them, her dress uniform crisp despite the ash blowing through the ruins. "You mistook our kindness for weakness," she said. "Our divisions for fragility. You saw a planet that had barely reached its own moon and assumed we were helpless. You never asked why we survived long enough to reach that moon, despite everything we did to ourselves." The ceremony began. Representatives from both sides stood before cameras that would broadcast to both Earth and every Velkthar world. The peace treaty was signed in silence, nothing but the wind moving through ruins. Then came the hardest part. The broadcast. Thulvax stood before the cameras and began to speak. His words were translated into hundreds of languages, sent across light years to every corner of the Velkthar Empire. "We came to Earth as conquerors. We brought weapons refined over 10,000 years of dominance. We brought fleets that had never known defeat. We brought the certainty of our superiority. We were wrong." He paused, gathering strength to continue. This was worse than death. This was admitting failure to an entire civilization. The humans did not fight with the best weapons. They fought with weapons they made from what they had. They did not fight with the largest armies. They fought with the armies they could muster. They did not fight with hope of easy victory. They fought because surrender was worse than death. On Earth, people watched in silence. On Velkthar worlds, citizens heard for the first time that their empire had been beaten. The news spread like wildfire through both civilizations. "We have learned what it means to face a species born in fire, forged in struggle, and united by defiance. We have learned that humanity does not yield, not because they are the strongest, but because they refuse to accept defeat. We came to subjugate them. Now we lament everything." The broadcast ended. Thulvax stood in the ruins of Sol, surrounded by humans who should have been slaves but were instead victors. He felt hollow, emptied of everything he had believed about his species and their place in the universe. Hyunwoo approached him after the ceremony. "You'll return to your empire now. Tell them what happened here. Tell them why you lost." "I will," Thulvax said, "though I'm not certain they'll understand." "Make them understand," Hyunwoo said. Because if another empire tries what you did, we'll do it again. We'll fight. We'll bleed. We'll make them regret it. That's our promise. Leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. But bring war to our door, and we'll teach you the same lesson we taught you. The Velkthar fleet departed 3 days later. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of their invasion force left Earth's system. They left behind technology, resources,